and welcome to Paint the Edges with your hosts, James Mack and James Thayer. Confirmed we are on YouTube. I know I've said this now at the last, 4 episodes? To anyone who's watching us, they'll be like, yo, fuck,
we get it.
We get it. But confirmed,
watching
because
it right now.
that video went up, and I had a look at it. And shout out to the 10 subscribers we had as of this morning, which is amazing.
Let's go.
But 2 of them, one of them being you, and one of them being James Marshall, which I think is hilarious. Anyways, shout out. Cool. If you found us not through anywhere else, how? Put in the comment of how this chaotic mess somehow landed in your vicinity of being able to watch. Like, what are you watching on YouTube that Tweedledee and Tweedledum, sorry, I put you into my case, but Tweedledee and Tweedledum came up as a suggested video? Can you imagine how funny that is?
Fitness things and not paint things.
Oh, dude, can you imagine how just like it was probably like how to make people feel special. Please watch the video following. Like something along those. It must have been horrendous. Of like what would suggest us. Like what? Like there would be. I would hope it's fitness. I would hope to God it's fitness. I somehow don't think it is.
Maybe not yet. It hasn't quite figured us out yet.
Yeah, we're an anomaly for now, and until it's like 10 episodes in, and it's like just don't show content to people. It's like, we apologize. You're gonna get a pop-up message from YouTube like, we're so sorry that we suggested this. We apologize in advance. Anyways, we're here. We're doing the things. I guess at some stage we probably need to do like an about us video. That sounds terrible. Like I don't want to do that. And
introduce ourselves to new people.
Introduce ourselves to new people. It's like I don't know if I like new people. But look, we're doing the thing where we're I don't know. We're being vulnerable and stepping out into the world of YouTube. Anyways, fuck it, whatever. So we're here. We do the things. We are deep into PSL1 right now. Are you teaching PSL1 this semester as well?
I can't remember. I'm not in this cohort.
Okay.
The current
I'm
cohort.
I am. And I mean, we always are in terms of like labs and some extent from that. Doing the fun things, going through, 16 weeks of applied biomechanics, functional anatomy, orthomechanics, just a lot of good things that kind of come off the bat with this. And we're starting to come up to one of my favorite weeks. Second favorite week, third favorite week. Favorite week, as we've spoken about before, is obviously like training variables and training principles, because everyone somehow doesn't know that. Like, and at the end of the day, does it matter? Yes. Do people need to know it? Yes. Do people need to apply it? Yes. Most people need to probably train harder before it becomes like a big factor, or becomes like the the needle that's going, or the variable that's going to move the needle. I think we've spoken about this, the basics and all that kind of comes into the mix. But when you understand training variables, I think if you have that understanding from the very beginning, you're going to make a better or create a longer runway for progression, which is then going to allow you to actually, make the gains and make the improvements that you're kind of looking for. But within the training variables, we go through kind of like strength curve, strength profile, and we've done this now at nauseum. But my second favorite or third favorite lecture that comes up is glute training.
It's a big one in the industry.
It's a big one in the industry.
In the clientele that you work with.
It is. Now,
or some of the clientele.
Now, I don't want to throw shade, and I'll say this to their face and anyone like that. I also don't really like the idea of like pigeonholing yourself into the glute guy or the glute specific. Like everything that you do around fitness is just like a muscle group specific. Imagine that I put this in the same way of like, imagine if I was like the shoulders guy. And I actually think there's the shoulder physio or some shit like that. And I get it from like a rehab standpoint. But it's not necessary, because at the end of the day, the principle applies in the same manner as if I'm training my pec as I'm training my glutes. And if I'm training my shoulders as if I'm training my glutes. And like predominantly, I understand where it comes from. I understand it comes from, the want and the need in some cases from like an industry or profession that you're in, if it's physique competitive and specific classes. I understand that there is going to be a need for a greater understanding of how we can train said muscle groups, but it doesn't need to be your whole persona, and it doesn't need to be like the thing that you become the expert in, because it's not that complex.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair that, if you develop your whole personality, your whole business model over something that is a very it yeah, at a base level, it's biomechanics. And once you've established that, it it can be basic. It can be kind of like follow a routine once you have that established. And I think that's an aspect of what we'll discuss today is this is whenever you can see novelty come into the space, because essentially what it becomes is I'm bored and trying to play with positions. I'm trying to, for the thousandth time, I can't tell somebody of like, okay, let's not have our knee go back. Let's make sure we have full foot pressure. Let's have our pelvis go through a horizontal translation instead of vertical. All these things, like there's a certain point where you maybe I'm just speaking from myself, but you get bored and you try to, put some bells and whistles on it. You try to experiment a little bit, but in that you can get lost in almost losing the basics that helped you bring to the point. And whenever you're pigeonholed into a muscle part specific, it's like it only, I mean, insertion, origin.
Nothing changes further than
Yeah,
that,
like
literally. But this is what I really think it comes down to, and it's unfortunately, and I don't know, think in this manner. I do think a lot of it is the social media aspect of it. You need to be do something unique and have the magic pill and the code and use my method of this, and that's how everyone gets results. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Like there's two elements to it. One, you put them in more stable, favorable positions that load the muscle, not the structure. And I think that's an important part of what I really want to kind of dive into is how do we increase tension across muscle fibers? How do we take origin insertion as far away if we're trying to lengthen it and as close to each other as possible? Understanding the base principles of biomechanics. Like you can't get a more shortened glute by changing the way in which you heel toe, your baby toe pushes it. That just doesn't fucking work. That's not how the body works when we kind of look at it. And off the back end of that, it's if you understand the biomechanics of it and you understand the base principles, you're going to load that, and you're going to have someone who's going to develop, or you're going to have genetic individuals who are going to just have that structure, have that physique already. And like genetics does play a massive factor into this, a huge factor. And ultimately, with these people who have, baby Jesus did a little bit of a sprinkle on them and gave them the glute gains, if they were, anything you throw at them, it's going to grow in any shape or form, in any manner. And you can't make the straw man argument off of like the one individual who suddenly kind of has these massive glutes or has a structure that improves because of your methodology. It's like, it's not because of your methodology. I could have literally told her to stand straight up in the air and air fuck something and squeeze her glutes as tight as she can, and they would have grown. That's it. Like you see these variables that come into play. Now, what I find so hilarious in this, and we will, and I really want to try not shit on people, but like it may have to come up. And you know what? Whatever, I'll say it to their face. We had, and the hip thrust came into the market, and I think by now, I don't care enough about it. anymore. Like I'm at the point of like yelling, like I've had enough yelling into the internet about why, from a principle standpoint, I don't agree with everyone who blames the hip thrust or utilizes the hip thrust for the exponential growth of their glutes. I don't think that's the case. It's a tool, it's an exercise that gets put in the chain. When you understand its limiting factors, when you know where the wheels are going to fall off with it, you know where to program it and where to you slot it in, and fantastic. It's another exercise in my repertoire. Do I think it's the best? No. Do I think it's adequate? Yes, it provides a value. It has a positive to it. And then I'm done fighting about if it's the best or not. What I'm not happy with now is we have this emergence of like, the hip thrust is wrong, and now we have to do this triple extension hip thrust because some individual has gone and looked at sprint mechanics and looked at hip extension and like hip extension while in locomotion, going through gait cycle and how we would run and sprint, and literally what happens at the pelvis and what happens with true hip extension of the acetabulum changing, or the sacrum kind of moving and getting the internal external rotation, and how that would happen and where force would be produced in that aspect of gait cycle. And they've gone, me running this way, I now go and change everything with regards to the hip thrust and like my model of producing force to replicate that of a sprinter, or the ideology of how a sprint mechanics would produce force. It's not the same fucking thing. One is your body weight and gravity moving, and one is a whole bunch of fucking weight on a fixed barbell or plane.
Essentially, it's the advertisement that you see of the athlete, like, oh, I took this product or I did this thing after they've already become the athlete, competed, they've won medals. It's like, no, you you look that way because you're in this sport and you've
Mhm.
been in that sport your whole life, and this is, you have a body type and abilities that are favorable to perform at a high level. It's, you didn't get the banded clamshells didn't make you an Olympic sprinter. Like, that
No,
wasn't part of the equation. It's a separation of that, that this is the advertisement, and that's kind of, to your point, what it you're looking at something separate, seeing, oh, sprinters have very developed lower bodies because everything it takes for them to be competitive and good sprinters, aside the fact of genetics playing a component in there. But yes, absolutely, if you have to absorb and have to produce large amount of forces, your muscle is going to respond to that. And so it's funny that we're looking at it through, in the application of fitness, that is coming out to, utilizing, hip thrusts or more glute focus rather than seeing an emergence of, sprint programs flood the industry, because that shit's hard and it sucks and it's way easier to be in the gym and lift some weights. To that, what I think, I would agree that, like, it's not, it's, if we're talking about the hip thrust in particular, the exercise, it's here to stay. That's not a bad thing. It has a place. It's understanding the concept of where that place is most appropriate and how we can actually train the glute through understanding that training, and then in application, why we would choose certain exercise for certain individuals, and what are some of the things that we might currently be seeing that the hip thrust got bored, that now, I mean, it's always been there to an extent, but kind of seeing a little bit of emergence leaning into one side because the bases are covered. If you look in most gyms now, and I could be, this might just be from my perspective of what I'm seeing, but it's a lot more rare now than 5 years ago that somebody's actually breaking out a barbell to do hip
yep.
thrusts, because how widely produced machines are. The machines have replaced that need for the barbell. It's opened up the squat rack and barbell again, and it's been put into, now there's a line of 10 to 15 companies making hip thrusts where it used to be one. And so even the emergence in that, so it's a main staple in the gyms now, and it has changed in a way. But now that it is kind of a lot more generally used and known, people are looking to move on.
Well, yeah, they're looking for it's the next trend. That's the Viper trend. We went from like kettlebells and functional movement, and then we went from like, no, we can't use the kettlebell. It's like now we're going to use the Viper. It's like it's the same fucking thing that's starting to kind of occur. It's the how do I separate myself as a coach in this saturated industry? And that's a conversation for another day. How do I separate? It's like, well, and credit where credit is due, and I think let's. I don't. I've never want to be the asshole in the industry. Like I think I can't remember. I had a conversation with someone the other day, and I had commented on a post that I saw, and dude, it was like 5 a.m. I think did I tell you this? Did I say this on the podcast? I feel like I have. Oh no, fuck, whatever. So it was 5:30 a.m. in the morning, like Sunday morning or Saturday morning, and like, dude, I was literally still rubbing the shit out of my eyes. And I was just lying in bed, and I was scrolling through Instagram as you fucking do, and like I saw this post come up, and it was someone talking about short and range movements, like different short and range movements, mid range and lengthened, and they threw the RDL into the lengthened for glute specific, and I literally just commented, and I was like, glutes is mid range. If we're looking at a fully lengthened glute, we would want to be unilateral so that we get pelvic shift. So that we get like the pelvis can laterally shift in terms of that's the only way we're going to lengthen. And then I scrolled on to the next fucking like fluffy golden retriever video and like commented on that or something. And that was my day. And like an hour later, I had a message from the dude, like being like, "Yo, if you want to, I thought we knew each other better. Like if you wanted to prove that you're smarter than me, like just send me a message." And I was like, "What the fuck is going on here?"
At that
so
point,
like I just like
forgotten about the
oh, dude, I was like, what are we
just
talking
moved
about?
on with your day.
And like so I went I like voice noted him back, and I was like, dude, in the nicest way, like you're interpreting it as that way. Like clearly there's something like why would you interpret it in that way is the first issue at hand here. And two, it's like, yo, I don't really give a fuck. Like I literally comment on it, or if I wanted to have a argument, I would voice note you directly, because fighting in the comment section means fuck all to me, and it also means in the nicest way, it also means that you can't converse, because voice note or face to face or like in person, we can have a real time discussion. I can see how your thinking works. Not because I think I'm smarter, but I like having that process that goes through, so that you're not sitting there on Chat GPT being like, what answer did he give? It's like, and how do I don't care. It means you can't. There's no original thought at play here. And then, like, anyways, it turned it out in a very good positive from that standpoint. And we ran through, I probably voice noted him for the next like 2 hours, going back and forth with different principles and different understandings and like constructive. And I literally said at the end, I was like, man, if I were to do anything, it's like, this is what I would prefer to do, because at the end of the day, it makes us both better as coaches. And like, my intention is never to be the dickhead or the, like, if you know me, you understand this. I may come across blunt, fair, and that could be interpreted as like asshole-ish in some ways, because I don't have time to not be blunt in some aspects. Like, I'm just going to say the statement and then carry on. It's also text, so it's like there's no tone behind it once again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't want to be the asshole, and I don't think we are. The whole point, we wouldn't be educating for the company that we do if we were trying to belittle people into, we are smarter than everyone. It's like, no, we're not. All we're really trying to do is just get people to think, I would say more, but think. And then off the back end of that, like, apply principles and context behind this. And this is, as I was kind of going into it, it's credit where credit is due. Someone has done some really interesting research and gone and dived into this and like looked at the locomotive kind of mechanics that would occur, and like fair, because at the end of the day, it's a cool aspect of what we do. We do sports performance, right? Like we speak about this quite a lot. Like we take the principles into Gen Pop, into fucking physique development from my side, into bodybuilders, into all aspects of this, and like we can play in every realm quite comfortably. Like both myself and you could sit in a room of Sallies of 60-year-olds and be able to get them to move, and we could go work with the NFL guys and be able to make them move and get the same result, and vice versa, and anything in between, because everything we do comes down to the principle. Now, the only way that we've learned that is research, understanding of the body, biomechanics, but there's the key thing in this whole discussion, I think, is being able and making sure that when we look at this, that we are looking at things, and quote, shallow and credit where credit's due, in 4 dimensions, not just the 2D stick figure, which everyone explains this whole principle of. And fair, when you look at sprint mechanics and triple extension, and you look at how that works, and the hips, the knee, the fucking off the ankle as well, like in the fucking stick figure, Steve, triple extension could be in that element. But like everyone's forgetting about the meat suit that we live in, and it applies to, and then like time as a variable that fixes all and is accompanying every aspect of this. And it's like, well, I don't understand how you can look at that but can't then think and apply the principle that comes off the back end. But that's what really infuriates me. Of we have some really intellectual individuals. If you can read and interpret the study and then put that through, like, good on you, fucking go for it. But think, apply the same kind of aspect to this. And the best example that I've been giving, because for some reason it's fucking huge here in Australia, the aspect and the way that we're referring to, and everyone keeps asking me in terms of the lower body of this new method and the way that we do it. And the best example that I give, because it's the one that everyone understood for some reasons. Excuse me. Holy fuck. Well, for some reason, right? So the rowing and bench pressing, upper body movements, for some reason, when we, like, what, 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, when we're doing like the 3-point dumbbell row, everyone got the idea after a while, like it took maybe 6 months to a year, that when we row, we don't want to dump the shoulder in. That we don't want that AC joint to go, like, we don't want this, and this is where we would get that pain in the front of our shoulder, and like super basic personal training, the green tick, fucking red X type of thing. That's where that came into, right? Like we saw this. We saw that, and then we would see, like, in bench press, and this is the example that I use now when someone tries to ask me about this, and I go, cool, I let them talk in terms of this. Just think about it in this manner, right? Because the upper body principles and the lower body principles are the same fucking principles. Like, it's the same movement. It's same movement in biomechanics. Like, so if I'm in a bench press and I'm at the top of a bench press, and like you could do this with a push-up if you wanted to as well, if you can't, but like if you're here and I forcefully and purposefully over cue into internal rotation, so I roll my shoulders in, I roll this forearm in, and I move this whole joint, okay, the glenohumeral joint in, and I roll it into this massive degree of internal rotation, and I try to bring the bar down from here. Like that. Think about, like, even if you're on a push-up and you're lying on the floor. I'm so glad we have YouTube now. People can see what the fuck I'm doing. Like, if you're in the push-up and like you did this, right? You're just loading the shit out of strike. That is the same thing that we are doing when we purposefully and forcefully cue someone at the hips into a deep degree of internal rotation. And even like what baffles me out of this entire thing, they don't even try and hide it. So it's not that they're not understanding. They're like, yo, I'm trying to get more internal rotation. It's like there's a large difference between like moving into internal rotation and being internally rotated. At the very beginning, when I want to, and hip thrust, RDL, bench press, anything of this, if I'm here and now I'm loading into the position, that is deceleration. Deceleration is external rotation. We want to be into the degree of external rotation. And now there is a relative internal rotation that occurs while this is happening. I think that's where the muddle up and the fuck up comes, is the understanding of relative internal rotation. Like the glenohumeral joint is going to go into that capacity. While I'm moving into external rotation, the muscles are externally rotating, or the joint is externally rotating. It's like there is a relative internal rotation that is going to occur here. Right? So when I hinge back, I don't want to be jamming the head of the femur into the acetabulum. It's like I'm just bone on bone, and that's not exactly how it works. There's a lot of other shit going on there, but it's structure on structure. That's probably a better way to describe it. Structure on structure, and we are not utilizing or lengthening origin insertion, lengthening the musculature that is there to take the applied force to then either produce more force, acceleration, which is where then the position of internal rotation, or being in relative internal rotation to then produce force out of it, is going to then increase the amount of mechanical tension across said muscle fibers, and that's going to then arrive to hypertrophy. I don't like the misconception of that, and I've just thrown a fuck ton of things at everyone, but it just baffles my brain. And like this example is the one that for somehow lands with everyone, other than the people doing it for some reason.
I think why that one lands with everybody, not only is it probably more visually apparent than what the pelvis in and the femur head are going to be, because you can see distinct movement in it, but also a lot of people have had that like, I press and I'm here. I'm trying to find space because I've been loading into structure. Whereas it's not as visually apparent. So making that association and understanding, not only from the structure standpoint of the similarities, as far as how we're loading or how we're limiting the position, but also the understanding that principles of movement are exactly they're principles of movement. They're
Principles.
any movement that falls within that category. And so that association or making that connection um, seems like it's been a good lead in to helping people get some type of visual representation or an understanding of what's happening. And to expand on that a little bit, that we've talked about previously, there's a difference between the range of motion of
A
a
muscle.
muscle and the range of motion of an exercise. And so a lot of times whenever we're looking in this topic or whenever this topic is being discussed, that range of motion of an exercise doesn't mean better. It means going to a degree where we can no longer, and by a consequence, often what we'll see is a load into structure, as you were describing, or positions that aren't as mechanically advantaged to execute an exercise, where if we're focusing on what is the range of motion that we can lengthen a muscle, staying within the qualities of that exercise that we're trying to execute on, that's where technical proficiency comes. And so, for the example, for anybody listening to this to kind of put it in your mind's eye, we'll dive a little bit deeper. But as Mac's talking about triple extension, loading the glute, so thinking about through the foot going into pronation, whenever we're pressing away like we're walking, getting the knee fully extended and the hip back behind our body is going to be triple extension. It's very performance terminology that we'll hear a lot of times because it is in context of gait cycle of our walking mechanics and more sport specific running mechanics, that this allows for propulsion forward. And this is going to be context. I'm going to use that phrasing again here in a minute. Propulsion forward is why we're using triple extension, because it creates power, it creates propulsion in sports. And that's why, again, that terminology is a lot more prevalent in the sport space. So with this, think in your mind's eye of a B stance or a single leg RDL, where your foot's on the ground if you're not as familiar with a B stance. But we have a ramp or a prop that is helping lift us into that triple extension. And that's some of, again, to give a visual aid for anybody listening or watching, thinking about this in context, because we'll dive deeper into it, but having that as in your mind's eye. So, a couple things that we can look to from that position of where it starts to break, some of these principles. One, what is our intention? Our intention is going to be loadability. And so, with that loadability, we want to have a stable environment. One, whenever we're pushing our center of mass forward past our base of support, inherently there is less stability. Why that matters, less stable environments send a neurological signal that we need to down regulate our ability to produce force in favor of trying to stabilize. And so this is one of the limiting factors of pushing us outside of our base of support, is it becomes an unstable environment, and through that instability we have a limitation in our ability to load. Now, whenever we think about triple extension in an athletic performance, what's the point of that? Is it's pushing us forward. We're trying to fall forward to catch ourselves with the next leg, the next step, and continue this propulsive. The needing to maintain load, it's about force production in forward progression. The thing is, whenever we now take the context of sprinting and limit it to not being able to propel forward, not being able to use that propulsive force through that force production, now we're maintaining that unstable environment. But our body not only is going to downregulate, or our nervous system is not only going to downregulate the force that we're able to produce, that is going to create a limitation in our load ability. But also, now we're going to start loading into positions that aren't meant to load into, because again, with that sprinting mechanic, even with gait cycle and walking, we don't load backwards, we're loading forward. So the carry forward is where that swing cycle comes in to start initiating either gait cycle or sprinting mechanics, to have a continuation of that momentum forward. Whenever now we've constrained that position in being able to utilize that momentum that we're creating, now we're trying to find structural positions that are going to allow us to tolerate that position. And that's part of what we'll see happening is, as you were describing, trying to create greater internal rotation. Internal rotation is happening because it's trying to produce force. Now we're essentially trying to operate completely in internal rotation and not using or advantaging our ability to internally and externally rotate. Instead, we're just jamming or limiting the space in which we can operate. So, same to the bench press, to kind of bring this full circle that you were describing. Whenever my scapula elevate, whenever my elbow wings out on that bench press, I have that structure and that's where I'm going to load. Yeah, it's internally rotated because now I put myself in a position where that's the only thing I can call upon. I'm not getting that external rotation back. I'm not going to be able to wing this elbow down or reset my scap under load. And so we're creating a similar environment in trying to get into a triple extended position of a hinge mechanic when we're taking strategies that are used in sprinting mechanics and trying to bring those into training, um, training not for a sprint but in fact training for a position that is almost doing the opposite of it, where we're trying to not not move our center of mass forward. We're actually trying to move our center of mass back on more of a limited base of support, because that extended position that we've limited or that we've constrained our position to.
It, yes, everything you just said. It's the
Well, here,
whole con. Yep.
so what I'll add to that is that's the logical reason of why maybe we wouldn't want to do this. Maybe why we want our foot on the ground. Maybe why we want the ability for our knee to be bent and stay in a bent position and our hip move around our femur instead of it moving as a unit together and extending backwards. This might be some of the reasons that we would look to that. But ultimately, what is overriding that, in my opinion, and let me know if you disagree or expand on, is this sensation. Because what is created through that position, through that down regulation, it's not just something, it's involuntarily happening at a very, very quick pace through our nervous system. But the sensation that we understand or interpret it as is I'm unstable. So, in that, I'm having to work or certain muscle groups that I've isolated in a position are potentially feeling it to a greater degree because they're trying to do more than what is typically expected in them. And that's not to say do more as far as, oh, we're getting greater potential benefits of hypertrophy. It's, hey, usually whenever my foot's on the ground, my glute med doesn't have to worry as much about my hip fucking off or my knee going back. And now it's these secondary, we can call them stabilizers, or just in general secondary muscle, secondary nervous system awareness positions that usually aren't having to be at the forefront of trying to maintain a degree of a position or have to be as aware. Now they're on high alert because we put them in that environment of uncertainty. And that uncertainty, again, is I'm going to fall forward. Let's let's try to get stiff. Let's try to lock this down. Like high alert, put the red lights on. So this is the signal that we are interpreting of like, oh, I'm feeling it more. This sensation driven focus is creating this awareness of our position more than what we commonly would in a more stable environment. So we interpret that awareness as I'm doing more work. And it's not that. It's a greater awareness of a position that typically we don't have to be in. What I would relate this to is um, keep it within this section, don't take it far. But whenever you experience pain, so that introduction of pain, you're more aware of the position of the area than what we typically are. Because if I cut myself and every day I'm hyper aware of the skin on my forearm, it's going to be very distracting. I'm not going to be able to focus on other things because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of interpretation that comes here. I'm on high alert because of that cut. But that should not be, that doesn't signal, hey, this is really good. It's something is here that we
Here.
need to be very, very aware of. This doesn't mean hey, this is a
Yeah,
good thing. We need to get more of these into the same thing of putting ourselves in an environment where it's not biomechanically advantaged to serve the purpose that we're trying to create of growing the glutes and trying to get hypertrophy through the byproduct of what we're doing, of the loadability, of the time under tension, of the changing in position of the length of the glute. We're not getting those to the degree that we could, not adopting this style because it's going against the principles that we're trying to utilize to train, in understanding something through a more global from a more global perspective of interferences, of how these things translate, correlate together, how our body moves, instead of this muscle centric approach of what is the way that I'm going to just try to pull this apart and bring it together.
it's and this may be a bad example because I do understand the two are slightly different surfaces. The way I kind of think about this is, you ever walked over a bridge, like a solid bridge? Like you walk over a bridge, it's quite high. There's an awareness that you're at a slightly higher mountain. Some people might get a little bit anxious, and like there's this signal that's sent to you, right? That's the normal response that we are kind of looking for out of the body. There's going to be some form of sensation. There's going to be some form of awareness of that, and that's going to be loadable, bigger base support, etc. You go from that to walking on the rickety bridge at the same height. Now your whole system's like, what the fuck is going on? I'm like, you're so high up. There's this unstable aspect of it. It's like you're now hyper aware of everything. The sensation is greater because of that awareness. And that. Now, I don't want you to look at the two surface areas and think that that's what I'm pulling the analogy from. I'm pulling the analogy from that anxious feeling that you're getting. That is the nervous system's response of like, hey, hi, this is fucking not a good place for us to be. That increase in sensation is a similar type of approach to what we're referring to within this. That is, it's not a good thing if that's kind of occurring. That's the way I would see it. And I'm not saying sensation isn't a good thing. Sensation is I'm not comfortable here when we are on a limited base of support, when we are loading structure and not muscles. That's when it becomes this is probably not a good thing.
Well, and to that was say sensation is a tool of awareness and recognition. It's trying to bring something to the forefront of our awareness, that we're interpreting. It's trying to make you aware. To your point, and to kind of expand upon that, sensation and stimulation aren't the same thing,
Same
and
thing.
that's where it gets crossed a lot. Is, if I'm feeling this, it must mean it's stimulating it. It must mean that I'm getting a greater degree of work because I'm hyper aware of it. I really like the example you gave of the different type of bridges, to double down on that a little bit, because where my mind went instantly is, if you're listening to this, have you been, like most people here, I assume, have been in, let's say, a 20-story building, but you're inside, you're walking the hall. Let's say you're in a hotel, you're
You could
walking the
feel it.
hallway on the 20th floor, no awareness at all. Hey, this is a safe environment and I'm going about my day. I'm not even acknowledging what's going on. Opposed to if you're an adventurer and you could be at the same height on the edge of a cliff and you look over that rock and hyper aware, you're more sensitive to every single step, even though it can be safe. It's a large surface area, but now you're more aware than you would be because that change in environment. And it's the exact same thing. It's not that because I'm in an environment where I can see the edge and there's a 20-foot fall, that now I'm thinking through imminent death. It's it's that it's just this change in environment, and I shouldn't I shouldn't rely on the sensation to create a better result of something. It's more so thinking about what is the intention, what is the utilization, what is the effectiveness of this training, and what are the principles. If it's going against principles that should bring about some questioning, of what is that advantage. Again, it's not to say that there's not a place for sensation to allow us to be aware and provide information. It's we shouldn't have that as a cross, or yeah, cross those that sensation and stimulation are synonymous, because they're not.
They're very different, and it's not something to discard. I think that's the key factor. Is sensation will give you, as a coach, as a trainer, it will give you an insight, but it is not the direct causation of stimulation. Doesn't mean that you completely don't be the coach or don't be the trainer that completely discredits it, because I think it can be a useful tool, but only when we have the base biomechanical principles in play, we understand that we are attempting to stay to the principles of hypertrophy, mechanical tension, metabolic stress, byproduct of that being muscle damage. When all of the principles apply and are being adhered to, sensation could be a very good tool and a useful tool. When you muddle that up and you go against, it's like trying to fight gravity, and now you get a different response. It's like that's probably not a good sign. That is your red flag, your red light on the dashboard. Like, hey, this is not where we should be.
And oftentimes, the solution is going to be a lot more simple and a lot more apparent whenever you are incorporating or mindful of these things in how you're selecting the exercise. To the point of it, the setup of this triple extended hinge position, whereas a B stance, a split stance lunge, a step down, all of these, the things that you probably already know that you've done, that you've utilized, all of these can produce great results. They have a lot of longevity in the program and a lot of ability to vary, to individualize it based on somebody's need. Yes, it's not going to be solely driven through sensation of, oh, if the person's not feeling it, they're not getting it. But again, it's thinking about how can I incorporate these principles, and it's not necessarily, oh, the newest next thing, because exercise as we know it has been around for quite a while, and it's produced some pretty spectacular
The
results.
results. Yeah, it's the. I go back to the whole thing of it's the. I have the magic key system lock. This is the unique little thing, the tweak that I put on it, so that I stand out within the industry. When it's like it's not. At the end of the day, it's not. It's applying the base principles, and you know, in some of these cases, doing that to the genetic elite, and boom, we have magic in terms of these things. For everyone else, we just got to keep doing what is supposed to happen, and that's be patient and keep training, and it will eventually come. That's kind of it. Glutes, kind of principles in defense of principles. I feel like that's where this one. On that note, someone, whatever, rip us the shit in the comment. I don't care. I will come at you anyway, so it's fine. We will chat to you next week.